order. We're going to start with a roll call.
Pledge allegiance.
Actually, the roll call is up before the pledge on the agenda. So
That's true.
I can
It's
switch
okay.
it out.
This is your 2 minutes.
Mr. DiLiberto,
I'm here.
Mr. Kern,
Here.
Mr. Akmanowitz,
Present.
Ms. Mitchell, Mr. Klein,
here.
Mr. Anderson,
Here.
Ms. Weed, Mr. Jackson,
Here.
Mr. McCucci.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Now, the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, there was a executive session held before the meeting to discuss a personnel matter and a safety matter. Okay, first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the August 9th, 2018 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Mr. Jackson, second. Mr. Kern. Discussion? No discussion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, this brings us to our first general public comment. Madam Secretary, has anybody signed up for public comment?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Bartholomew?
Please state your name and area of residence.
My name is Victor Bartholomew, and I live in Milford Township. I just paid my taxes yesterday, and it got me thinking, it seems like your fund balance seems to be more important than the taxpayers. I call my fund balance my savings account, and every year I must take more of my fund balance to pay my taxes. You can talk to your blue in the face about that fund balance must be kept at a certain number, but at least you have that choice. We taxpayers don't have that choice. We must take more of our fund balance every year to pay these higher taxes. You tell us that you are here for the children. Well, what about the parents of those same children who must sacrifice more and more financially to pay these higher taxes? This must stop. I don't know who I am more disappointed in, this board or our professionals who refuse to take a pay reduction to help ease the tax burden on this community, who also, by the way, pay their salaries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bartholomew. Nobody else has signed up. Anybody else like to make any comments at this time? No? Okay, thank you. Next, we're moving to the superintendent's report. Dr. Harner.
Yes, sir. It is my privilege, first off tonight, to introduce Chief Fico from Richland Township. He is the police chief there, and Officer Brian Hendrizak, who is our new SRO for the school district, housed primarily at Strayer Middle School. Brian, will you stand, please? And I just wanted to introduce him, say all the board members have a face with a name, and besides this lovely photo that's out there, that's my 6,700 closest friends have had a chance to see. So it's better than being on the post office wall. But Brian, want to thank you for accepting the opportunity. Could you briefly tell the board your training over the last couple of weeks?
Yes, I've attended a week-long course at basic SRO school, which is a course that encompasses pretty much everything that we need to know as police officers, law-related and school-related insight. Collaboratively together to make sure. I also attended Alice Instructor School. I'm sorry, Alice Training School with the intention of going to instructor school yesterday. Carries the start. And from there, I'll be attending the new teacher orientation.
You've already had a chance to meet a lot of the faculty out there. I've seen you in the Twitter world.
I have, yes, and I had the privilege of meeting, working with Dr. Buzzer and her staff.
So we've provided him an office in the front, working with Chief on procurement of equipment. That's same with Bob Lee, Officer Lee at the high school. And we have our beginning of the year get-together with Chief McElroy, Chief Fico, our safety coordinator, Miss Edwards, and I, and next Tuesday to kick the year off. Safety is, the safety committee, as you know, that you've established for this year meets how soon? And you met with your chair today. So we've, Diane Ricino has volunteered to be the chair of the safety committee. She's one of our parents. She's experienced working with our community committee, so she knows our buildings, she knows our redistricting plans. I mean, so it's great for us. We've sent out MOUs to our municipalities. We have one that right now that has said that they weren't inclined to sign the MOU, to giving him access to and authority to work outside of Richland Township. We have that for Bob Lee, but being able to work in every municipality, but not one.
So for clarity, you just said that there are people in charge that are not giving one of our SRO officers permission to enter their municipality in case there's a problem at one of the schools.
In my understanding, we have different levels of use of an SRO. One is instructional use, and Brian can go anywhere if he's an invited guest of the school district to go provide, like what we used to call DARE instruction, drug, I forget what the acronym stands for, but I left school by that time, but I know it used to exist. But going in and providing instruction, making sure the students know who he is, and building that familiarity across the school district. Then there's, if we have an incident with a student, a faculty member, a parent, somebody comes in that would need a police officer's support in this one township, he would not be able to provide and this is at Poff Elementary School, he would not be able to do that. So that's what we're.
Is that legally true?
If there was
Just a nice to have an MOU? I mean, is he?
If it was a 911 problem.
Yes.
It is my understanding we would get police, if it happened in one of our schools, no matter which school it was, that we would have police officers that would be crossing the county line from Lehigh, from Montgomery County. This is how we practice. We talk through those things when we have our meetings.
Yeah, I guess my point is, God forbid something happen and Brian's like, we don't have an MOU, so I guess I'll just sit here and watch. Like, I just can't imagine that actually, like an MOU actually having that much power. Mr. Garten.
What it does, it confers upon the SRO police powers on behalf of that municipality in the school setting. So in the absence of the MOU, in the absence of an emergency, the officer that's in that township does not have police powers because the municipality has not conferred those powers on that individual.
Yeah, I meant mostly for an emergency.
The emergency piece, yeah, that's the key word there.
So would it be, and maybe this is for the chief, it's fairly common that if there's an event, I have to imagine it, we would see a response from all over the place, regardless of whether there was an MOU in place. Does that sound correct?
Yes, if there's an emergency, all it takes for another police department to enter into a jurisdiction is a call from that jurisdiction. So if the state police were to call and say, hey, we need help at POF, we're covered.
Okay.
It's municipal jurisdiction.
Okay.
So we're covered.
Okay.
That call would have to come from another police entity, or would someone in the school be able to call and ask for that?
Now, it would have to be a request for assistance from the police department.
Okay.
Which is the state police in that regard,
Correct.
in this jurisdiction.
And would they,
We have those conversations all the time.
and would that be fairly quick? I mean, I would imagine it's not something that we would see a delay in, right?
I'd be willing to bet that before that phone call even happened, the cars would be already rolling that way.
Got it.
So you anticipate those things in our profession, unfortunately.
Sure.
So, but we do need to have them for coverage.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
The question, I guess, to the board and my fellow board members is there anything we can do, a document that we can send on behalf of the entire board? Is there anything else we can do to sort of throw our support behind it?
I don't
Or?
understand why there would be a negative to it.
Well, right, I mean, it would sound like it could be just simply politics playing out, regardless of whether it
I would
is. The
think
question
that-
is, can we do anything as a unified board, send in a letter sort of in our support of signing it?
I would think it'd be a good thing to have the board send a letter to the board of supervisors.
Sure.
And say it's important, need a dialogue. If you want to sit down with us, we think it's a good idea. Let us know why you have an issue. I think it'd be appropriate to do that.
Maybe we could bring like ice cream to the meeting.
Thanks, John. It is, the municipality has its next meeting, supervisors meeting on the 4th, and I was going to be there to take questions and take their concerns, whatever they are.
I plan on attending also.
And I know the principal, and I'm hoping that some of the parents from there, I've spoken to a couple teachers who live in that work in the school and also live in that municipality, that they'll plan on attending.
So how do we get the letter sent, and do we have to make a motion and vote on it, or?
No, I think it's a consensus you can do.
Yeah, I'm all for it.
Do
Everybody?
we want, yeah. I have no
Okay.
objection.
Dr. Harner, would you like to draft that letter?
We'll get it done.
Yes.
We'll get it done. Moving on to the next item.
Real briefly, I just wanted to welcome Officer Henderzak aboard. Thank you very much. In today's day and age, I think your presence is very important, and I know we're all happy to see you.
I will tell you that I've received dozens of positive comments about, everyone knows him in the community already. He's a coach. He's been a police officer for how many years here in Richland Township? 13 years, and has a great reputation within his own profession besides his community service.
Officer Henderson, would you sign this for me?
Welcome to the team, sir.
Sorry, sir, please continue.
Next person I'd like to introduce is the gentleman that I will be recommending to replace the irreplaceable Kelly Harper as the interim facilities director, Craig Bolts. Craig, would you stand up a minute, please? Craig is, I'm going to read your bio, and then you might want to jump on this a little bit. Craig recently retired as Director of Buildings and Grounds at Lebanon School District. Mr. Bolts has 33 years of experience as a facilities director, having worked for 3 Pennsylvania school districts. His active membership in PASBO includes having been elected to the PASBO Board of Directors, and that's the Pennsylvania Associations for School Business Officials. And it's everything over in school operations. They have all the different kinds of things that we do. That's the service and the organization that they provide. He served in Lancaster, Lebanon Plant Managers Group as president for 3 terms and secretary for 3 terms. Mr. Bolts received PASBO's 1995 Award of Achievement in recognition of his outstanding practice, and he served on a document review team. It just goes on. So he has got a great resume. One of the key things that's important to us, he's going to be working with us 4 days a week because he has a commitment already for 1 day a week outside the school district with another school district. And a part of his part of his service he's going to provide is an audit, which would be a separate thing that we'd be paying on top. So we're getting a twofer here, at least in my view. Craig, anything you'd like to share besides picking on the superintendent? Oh. That's good to know. We see you standing tall. Our next item on the superintendent's report is a report out on the metrics.
Okay, you can go directly to slide 7. Tonight we're reporting out on some of our results from 17-18, and there is a PowerPoint in board docs that you can review, given our desire to be there for the band at 8 o'clock. Just a couple of highlights. The elementary, middle, and high school metrics are listed in there. From a color coding standpoint, green means we met the target. Yellow means while we didn't meet the target, we did either have steady or improving performance, and the red ones are an area of concern, and math continues to be a primary area of concern. So I'll begin with the end in mind. If you want to go to, let's see, slide 13. Okay, yep, whoa, back one more, just back one. Our overall results, we met the target 9 of the 24 metrics. One we excluded because there isn't data due to some changes in the CCR class. We were within 1% of the target for 4 others. So the ones that we met or were within 1% of our target was 13 of the 24 metrics, and we will continue our progress towards our goal of 85% college and career ready by 2019-20.
So I looked at some of those, close. It looked like one was like a couple of tenths off. I would recommend you, if I may, I would say I would turn those things green. Not, like that's so close that if you did a little roundup, it would be on target.
Is it a gimme?
I mean, if I was doing target practice and I was that close, I'd call it a bullseye. So I think that's a little harsh on yourselves to be a couple of tenths off.
I was going to speak of that during the president's report, but since you brought it up, I would fully support that, and I was going to suggest the same thing. And I know we're voting on the results here later, and what I'd like to do is also have someone make a motion that we flip the switch from yellow to green on those if it's less than 1%, and that's those 4 things. I don't think we should quite slice it that tightly, so I'd like to do that before the vote if possible.
I mean, metrics are great, trends are better, and that kind of precision, I think, needs to be rewarded for your trends, not necessarily being off by 0.2% out of 70.
The golf ball is kind of like almost in the hole.
Well, that's different.
It's Caddyshack before the explosions, okay?
I got it.
Thank you. Our next report is from Dr. Hoffman on last year's PSSA's Keystones, SAT, PSAT, and AP results.
So good evening. There is a presentation in board docs that I invite you to look at. There's a lot of data. It's very numbers heavy, so it's something that might not be enjoyable for everyone to listen through each step of things. As Ms. Edwards pointed out, math continues to be an area of concern for us that we are looking at, particularly at the middle level. So that's certainly something that Mr. Lesher and I are going to be diving deeper into. But we do have some definite points of celebration. I listed the overall PSSA scores for the district, PSSA scores by building, so that you can see by grade level and overall how we're doing. You should note that the tests continue to change, so it's not necessarily a apples-to-apples comparison. They keep changing the target a little bit there for us, but it's close enough that you can see how we're doing. A big point of pride if you look towards the end of after the Keystones at the high school reports. We've had some really great improvement in our AP numbers, our AP scoring. The number of students who have reached AP Scholar status has continued to improve. So I hope that you'll take a look at that. And if anybody has any more specific questions, I plan to go over it a little bit more in detail at the next Education Committee, where we can kind of dive into it once we've had it. We've just gotten some of these results, so once we have a chance to kind of dig into them a little deeper.
Thank you, Dr. Hoffman.
Can I ask for just one recommendation? So it's tough it's tough for me to look at these numbers and know, I mean, there's always like sort of ebbs and flows, but general direction. is there any way you can put this in sort of a line graph for us? to see,
Histogram, got it.
You know?
Sure.
And just maybe a 5-year spread so we could see what direction it's going in.
The,
I mean, I don't know, and what's really kind of odd is sometimes like science is like blowing things out of the water, and then, you know, you go down to sort of like other things. Is this normal? Is this what other school districts see? Is this what normal looks like in your business?
Yes, we are absolutely in line with state averages. Of course, I would not like to be in line with state averages. I'd like to see that we're well above, and in some of the areas we certainly are. But the places where we tend to dip and, having the struggles in middle school math is absolutely a trend across the state and even with neighboring districts. We do still continue to outperform, some neighboring districts, especially with our poverty level, but we're starting to lose some of that ground, and that's a concern. Part of the difficulty with giving you, and certainly I'll try to find a different way to present that hopefully will work, but like I said, when the test changed, there aren't cohort analysis, it's not available, because they were asked different types of questions, or there were only 2 sections instead of 3, or there's no longer in RELA the same number of open-ended, so the scoring's different. So I can go back when they first redesigned the test and provide you with kind of like a trajectory that shows what we're doing, but you just have to be aware that during that time, the test has changed.
So is it fair to say that in 2015, so if I look at 2015, 16, and, I pick a school and it's, at 80, goes up to 86, and then back down to 81.
So you have the
Is
added.
this the same test, or is this a different test?
So this year's test was slightly different than previous year and will be slightly different next year. But you also have that you're looking at it by grade level and not by cohort. So you would need to look at how last year's third graders did on math compared to how this year's fourth graders did on math, if you want to see if that same group of kids has been moving along, which is another way that I can certainly present the data for you, if that would.
So then
be
looking back
something-
here, so I'm looking at grade 3 ELA.
Okay.
Grade 3 ELA is 86 on POF. Grade 4 ELA would be last year's group, right? So it goes down to 82, right? Is that what you're saying?
So what would have happened is if you look in 2016-17, those third graders at that point were at 86, and this year they're at 82.
Okay.
So while you look at the fact that grade 4 made improvements as a fourth grade from 78% last year to 82, they actually lost ground because
Yeah,
those
that's what I'm
kids
saying.
went from 78 to 74. So it's just which way you'd prefer to see the data, by cohort or by grade level. I can do both and put it into a chart for you for the next Ed committee meeting if that would be helpful. Does that summarize what you'd like?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think, because it's such a different, it's not like you're comparing apples and oranges. I mean, you're not comparing two groups that are this alike, right?
It's almost like comparing this year's Eagles to last year's Eagles.
Yeah.
Almost this kind of, I won't say pointless, but it's.
Yeah, it is actually. I mean, so is looking at last year's data.
Yeah. I think another metric that's going to hopefully be helpful for us is the Future Ready Index, which has not been released yet, so we don't actually know what it's going to look like, but hopefully that'll give us a comparison point also now that we don't have the SPP to use, which maybe will provide some
So
additional.
what changes do you make in math if, you kind of identified it, you said it's a struggle. What do we do differently?
So we did something differently a couple years ago by starting with the new elementary math curriculum, and it takes time to move ahead, but unfortunately there are kids in those classes now that we have to do some skill recovery with them. So we talked actually to Mr. Thompson today about some strategies that he's going to put in place in the 6th grade center, which I think all of us felt really good about. And having Mr. Lesher be out in buildings and in classrooms like he's been last year, trying to tighten up some of those instructional practices and making sure that we're meeting kids where they are and trying to move them ahead.
Cool. Thank you.
The last thing, there are points of celebration at the high school level. Definitely our students who are graduating from us are going off a lot higher, being college and career ready. The number of students this year, the senior class that took and passed an AP exam was 31% of the graduating class, which is huge. And in comparison with the same percentage of our a lot more affluent districts that are here in Council Rock and Central Bucks, so we're doing really well there. Also, in the PSAT, as you probably remember taking it back in the day, the PSAT we offered for both eighth graders, 10th graders, and 11th graders, and 11th graders. And this year's incoming senior class, there are over 10% of our senior class, about 40 students, are in the top 90 percentile on the PSAT across the country. That's huge. So you can, the level of rigor they're getting at the high school and the tougher classes they're taking 9th through 12th grade, because they're taking college level classes now in 9th grade, and some students, since we closed the freshman center, they're able to take almost anything they're able to take, in their curriculum, and then when they're ready for it. So you have 9th graders taking multiple AP classes now. And so the level of ability of our graduates is really going up. So the challenge we have is middle school, and one of the things we talked about 4 years ago, looking at the trend lines for when I first got in here. As I talked today in another meeting, we have a scissors crisis, and it's like the scissors. Our scores, and this is a national trend, state trend, local trend, our students come out of 5th grade at a higher PSSA score in 5th grade, and then it starts declining down about 20% over their middle school experience when they should be going up, and up here being college ready, because it's the Common Core standards. It's the reverse for our reading verbal. It's that they're down here coming in from 5th grade, and they're on the rise. So that's where you got math going down, you have English language arts going up, and you can see that on the metric data, you can see that on the performance there. And if we had a way to show PSSAs over time, 5 years, they'd be different tests. So we can't prove it to you geographically and being accurate.
Thank you, sir.
That completes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Harner. We'll move on to the standing committee reports. The first on the agenda is the policy committee, but I know the chairwoman, Ms. Weed, was not in attendance tonight. Did the committee meet at all?
Yes.
Mr. Kern?
All of us met.
Mr. Kern, would you like to give the report then?
Certainly. It's always good being the only member, and there's no debate.
Are you sure?
I know. Typically, I do argue with myself. So, but Nancy Ann and I soldiered on, and we did some stellar work. My favorite activities are getting rid of things when it comes to regulations. So, we collapsed 2 redundant regulations into one for the extra duty assignments. Do I need to say the numbers? You can probably check on that, right? 1016. We did another one, the political activities. There was extra regulation, and we combined it into one. We updated, there were some very old, not been touched in a long time policies, so we updated the food services language. There was another update in the technology area. So Joe probably cringed at some of the old terminology. And there was some recommended wording to upgrade the sorts of things you are and are not allowed to do for acceptable use of our electronic resources here. Even that word sounds funny. But in other words, all the computer stuff here, like proper ways to use and not use it, that was updated. We basically got rid of the petty cash policy, because does anybody even know what petty, like, it'd be great if there were students here. Raise your hand if you know what the term even means. Probably nobody knows what it means. So as Nancy Ann said, yeah, there's no money in the coffee can in somebody's desk anymore. And we reviewed some minor changes to the evaluation of classified personnel, and that means the, what'd you call it, like the support staff are called classified. And we reviewed the ethical behavior of professional staff. The policy, we didn't actually review their people's ethical behavior.
Glad to know. Thank you.
And that was it.
Thank you, Mr. Kern.
This is riveting. Surprised we didn't have more public people there.
Next is the Finance Committee. Mr. Makuchi.
We did not have a meeting.
Thank you, sir. The Facilities Committee, Mrs. Mitchell is not here. Is anyone else from the committee, would anybody like to update us?
The update was done at the last board meeting.
Okay, very good.
So, do we have any update on the outstanding projects, by the way? Anybody?
Not that I'm aware of, no. Okay, next is the Bucks County Intermediate Unit, number 22, Mr. Jackson.
In an effort to keep things flowing, I'm going to do all three of my reports real quick here.
Thank you, sir.
The IU report, we met on Tuesday. Summary of the awesome stuff we did is included in your board docs there, so feel free to peruse that. IU is also going through a policy cleansing, Mr. Kern. They're doing what we've been doing for the last several years, but they're doing it all in one giant fell swoop for the next few months. They had their opening day yesterday morning, which I also attended, which was pleasantly fun. Legislative report. It's election season, so nothing's happening in Harrisburg, amen. But if you care about one person's opinion, the legislative report includes somebody's projection of where the elections stand, which is worth about the paper that it wasn't even printed on, but it's there. And the Ed Foundation, we met prior to the last board meeting, and I updated you on that one at that time. There's nothing to report today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jackson. Moving on to the Education Curriculum Committee, Mr. Anderson.
We did not meet today, so I don't have any report.
Okay, and lastly, the Upper Bucks County Technical School, Mr. Achmanowitz.
On Thursday, we met on Thursday, August 16th, the JOC. We started right around 7. We had an executive session in the beginning, discussed a personnel issue. Our assistant director, Catherine Planarski, she received her doctorate. This came up in discussion. Dylan Miller, who is a student at the tech school, won second place in his trade school competitions. I can't remember what they're called, forgive me. It's
Skills USA.
Skills USA, thank you. I just totally blanked on it. Because of that, he received a very large scholarship, about $17,000. About $30,000 scholarship. He got about $17,000 in tools. He's not a student here, but very proud of him. The school did, however, receive a Harley-Davidson as a donation from Harley-Davidson for the small engines repairs class. Came valued in around $28,000. The tech school also is forming a possible partnership with Yamaha Motors so that we can offer an apprenticeship program. It looks like the tech school is going to try and get into the market of marine motors because they are far and few between if you were looking for courses. We received $2,095 in donations from Chick-fil-A. The tech school will be moving over to Canvas for 2019. The school did pick a theme for 2019, be the best person, student, and citizen you can be. We received a Carl Perkins grant valued around $7,000 for math and science professional development. And we re-upped our Bellhaven skilled nursing facility. We have a clinical arrangement where our students go out and help care for some of the patients there for another 3 years. And last but not least, the next regular JOC board meeting is September 20th at 7 o'clock. And there is a parents' information night on September 11th from 5:30 to 7. That concludes my report for this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Achmanowitz. And just so everyone knows, the student that was responsible for the Harley-Davidson donation placed second in the country. Okay, so that is a huge, huge deal to place number 2 in the country. The top 5 got similar donations from Harley-Davidson and other sponsors that with scholarships and whatnot. So thank you, sir. Okay, moving on to the President's report. I have two things, actually, that I'd like to discuss. First and foremost, for the other board members, I think we all agreed that we got something out of the Welcome Workplace sessions that we had earlier this year, and we had discussed possibly scheduling more of them. So I think, we should have a discussion about when we would like to schedule them. I know I would like to have another session with Laura Lomax. I got a lot out of it. So, thoughts, comments?
Are you looking for date suggestions or all encompassing? Yeah, we agree we should do that, probably.
Well, I think we have another retreat coming up, Dr. Harner. I was thinking maybe we could coordinate with that.
Okay.
When is the retreat?
We don't have a tentative date yet.
It would be probably in the fall, though, correct?
Yes, sir.
So I'm thinking maybe we can combine the two so that we're not looking at multiple dates for this. So,
If Laura could accommodate, that would be wonderful.
yeah. And any other thoughts on that? Okay, Dr. Harner, if you could look into that, that would be
Thank you.
great. Thank you. The next is, and Mr. Kern spoke of it earlier about the performance metrics. I'd like to suggest that we round up any metric that is less than 1% of target when it's that close, so that it is considered to be on target. Mr. Garten, do we need to make a motion and vote on that?
Well, when you get to that point in the agenda, I would suggest that the motion, I think you're approving that, are you not?
It's on the agenda to be approved.
You have a motion to include that reference as part of your motion to approve that element.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any thoughts or comments from other board members on that? Does anybody have any objections to that?
I'm going to raise an objection personally, only because I appreciate the thinking, and it makes complete sense, but I'm always leery of doing that, only because we don't want to highlight, the yellow kind of highlights where we just missed sometimes, and we're not trying to highlight we just missed it or anything like that. I don't want to lose the fact that we didn't make our goal. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. We didn't make the goal. I understand we were darn close. I get it. But we didn't make the goal.
The yellow actually highlights where there's continuing progress. It doesn't actually highlight that you're that close to making it.
Okay.
There were 4 of those that were less than 1%. And from my perspective, there's a lot of things in contractual terms that are based on hitting those types of metrics. And I think if it's less than 1%, I would be for, bumping it up, rounding it up if you were. We've had several of these over the years, and that's just my thought. It's so close, and if it's more than 1%, I agree. If the target was 85, you're at 84, so be it. But I think if you're at 84.7 and the target is 85.
We're actually at 84.9. Yeah, that's all right. Come
on.
Round up.
Yeah.
So we're just saying, we set goals for ourselves. We're going to hit them, give or take 1%.
Yeah.
I agree. I just think there's a standard and you should make it, that's all.
Any other comments? Okay. Well, when we get to that part in the meeting, we'll have a vote on it and see what happens. Okay? All right, that brings us to public comment on the fiscal items being presented for a vote tonight. Do we have anybody that would like to comment on the fiscal consent agenda? No? Okay. The fiscal consent agenda consists of approval of the 2018-2019 bus routes, which are on board docs, approval of water filtration and service rental agreement with Quench USA for Richland Elementary School, which is detailed in board docs. Okay. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Akmanowitz, a second.
Second.
Mr. Kern, discussion.
Do we have a number of one of the fiscal consents is the bus routes, correct?
Yes.
Do we have a number of children who are hitting that one? Is there anybody hitting an hour drive on the bus under this current route? Do you know?
Not that I'm aware tiered system, how many are in each tier.
Okay, I
Get
mean,
that by next board meeting.
all right.
Let's do that.
those are going to be the outliers, the ones that are, I'm just curious.
Any other discussions? Comments? Okay. All in favor of accepting the fiscal consent agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Next is public comment on the human resource items being presented for a vote tonight. Anybody wish to make comment? No? Okay. The human resources consent agenda consists of administrative staff, professional staff, unit pay, support staff, contract with PASBO for interim services, contract with the BCT or the BCIU number 22 for interim services. Do I have a motion to pass, or do I have a motion to vote on the human consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Mr. Jackson, second.
So moved.
Mr.
Second.
Rachmanowitz. Discussion.
Yeah, I was going to ask to pull Kelly Harper's resignation, but thank you for all you've done. Always been a wonderful pleasure working with you, and your professionalism is greatly appreciated, and good luck.
I second that.
I third that. Okay, all in favor of accepting the Human Resources Consent Agenda as presented, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
I abstain.
One abstention. Motion passes almost unanimously. Okay, moving on for public comment on Office of Teaching and Learning items presented for a vote. Anybody have any public comment? Okay, the Office of Teaching and Learning consent agenda is to approve the Aspire Plan course statements, approve of a textbook on personal finance. Do I have a motion to accept the Office of Teaching and Learning consent agenda as proposed?
So moved.
Mr. Anderson.
Second.
Mr. Jackson. Comments? Discussion? Okay. All in favor of accepting the Office of Teaching and Learning consent agenda as presented, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Public comment on the policy and program items being presented for a vote tonight. Okay. The policy and programs consent agenda is as follows. Approve agreement with UHS of Doylestown Foundation LifeWorks for the 2018-2019 school year. Approve the Quakertown Community School District performance metrics for 2017-2018. And I guess we need to have a motion at this point to amend that.
I would say you should separate out that item,
So pull that item.
pull that item and vote on the other item that apparently not controversial.
Okay. Do we need a motion to pull the item?
Yes.
Okay.
I make a motion to pull the item on performance metrics.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Rachmanowitz. Okay, so what we're going to do is vote first on the policy and programs consent agenda without that item?
You have to vote to remove it first.
Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. Hold on, Rachmanowitz there.
Hey, I was just trying to keep things moving.
Okay, all in favor of pulling the approval of the performance metrics, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Now you proceed to consider the UHS agreement.
Okay, so basically what was the policy and programs consent agenda without the metrics? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the policy and programs consent agenda without the metrics as previously proposed? Ooh, we have a dead tie there. Okay, I'll give it to Mr. Anderson. Yes, and
I'll second.
you'll second it, okay, very good. Discussion? No? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay. Now we vote on the motion to amend the performance metrics as discussed. Anything less than 1% will be rounded up in an instance where it meets the projected target. Discussion. Oh, wait a minute, we need a motion. Okay. Motion to amend the approval of the Quakertown Community School District performance metrics for 2017-2018 to include any scores that are less than 1% within the target to be rounded up to meet the target.
So moved.
Mr. Kern?
Can we?
We'll have a discussion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Rachmanowitz. Discussion.
So I agree. I mean, 1% to me is a big number. 0.5 is not. So some of these numbers that we talked about, where it's 84.9 going to 85 sounds realistic to me. But
I wrote down all the deltas if you want. I mean, the four deltas are 0.7, 0.1, 0.5, and 0.4.
yeah, so I was thinking from the 0.5 up I would be on board with rounding that up. But starting at the bottom, a full percentage point sometimes is a large number to me. It may seem smaller now when we're talking about, but the 0.1 is a very minuscule number. So 1% seems large. I think I would be, rounding up at 0.5% seems like a realistic compromise to me, because, especially these 0.7, 0.8, 0.9s. I don't know if that helps anybody here.
I don't know. I'm good with, if it's less than 1%, the most it would be is, 0.9. Looking at this type of a thing, I mean, I'd be okay with going any fraction of a percent upward.
One of the benefits
I
is-
see what you're saying, Keith, though, but
Yeah, I'd agree with Mr. Mercucci. I think 0.5% is reasonable. I think at 1%, you're really lowering it by a significant amount. To Mr. Kern's point, majority of them were in that 0.5% range. I think that takes care of it, and it just gives you the opportunity to say, well, yeah, there's improvement that's needed, and it's recognized in the document, with everybody being kind of graded on that.
And I'll just say the one that is the 0.7%, it's the percent of students passing, successfully completing level 1 and level 2 of a world language by graduation college ready. So it's somewhat of a nebulous metric. It's an interesting one, now I look at it. The target was to be greater than 65%, and they were only 64.3%. That's the biggest. And the other ones that were like 0.1 were like out of 80 something, 0.5 or 0.4 out of 90 something. So this is also the largest percentage of a percentage, but that's also a weird metric. But anyway,
This is the kind of argument students would make all the time in their grades, and to me, you have to have a standard. That's all there is to it, I think.
If you're intent upon changing it, someone has to make a motion to amend the motion to be 0.5 and above, which you were, 0.5 and below, I guess, as being what you're going to vote on. That's where the discussion's leading.
okay. Mr. Jackson, do you have any thoughts on that?
I already said what these.
Okay, I didn't know if that made it any different for you.
I understand.
All right. Okay. It sounds like the 0.5 would be what most people want. So do we have a motion to amend the motion to 0.5% and above?
so moved.
Okay.
And I would second that.
Okay. So then we'll vote on the amended motion to round up any target that is 0.5% or higher up to meet the specific number. All in favor, any further discussion, excuse me. Okay. All in favor of the motion as presented, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so the motion passes. 5-2, thank you. Yep. Okay, now we will vote on the original approve the Quakertown Community School District performance metrics for 2017-2018 as just amended. Do I have a motion to approve the metrics as amended?
So moved.
Mr. Akmanowitz, second.
Second.
Mr. Kern, discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay. So the motion passes again 5-2. Okay, next is information items. We have the board briefing book. Feel free to look at that on board docs. And we have invitation for bid, IBF results for select Milford Middle School surplus property. That is also on board docs if you would care to review that information. Okay. Any new business for the board members?
One thing I would like to bring up is if we could go to one board meeting a month instead of two. I don't know how we should go
Second.
about that.
Shouldn't that be held until we do the reorganization meeting in December, because that's when we outline the meeting schedule, correct? I mean, we can discuss it now, but there's really no action to take until that time.
I mean, if you guys want to discuss it now, that's fine with me, or we can wait until closer to the December meeting.
I would invite conversation at a later meeting if it's.
Well, can you amend the, I mean, you can't fix that?
Well, the meetings,
Meeting schedule anytime.
Right. Now, we are up against the time where Dr. Hunter would like to end the meeting. It is now,
This is the board's meeting.
I know that, but there is something scheduled over at Alumni Field tonight, so I'm being mindful of that.
the meetings aren't official until they're posted in the newspaper or wherever the online notification is.
You have to change posting one time if you make that.
Right. There's been a schedule on board docs since December. So, I mean, I would not want to change the schedule this calendar year, just because it's been on the website since we created the calendar back in December. If you want to go to another, that's why I say if you want to go to a once a month, I think the discussion should be had in November or October, and then.
Well, that's not that far away.
Correct, it's not. I'm just.
I'm
So for
okay
the
with that,
record,
but
would that be just a policy change, or is that something that we
it's,
vote on?
we would vote on that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there's no
Yeah,
policy?
there's no
You have
policy.
to have two meetings?
Right.
Okay.
May I get
Yeah.
may I have a brief consensus or
Yeah.
an idea from the board on what that is? Because we have to start changing our structure around, like,
Okay.
plan ahead.
Well, the better
Can-
question is, can it be done? Can you,
We could do it, but you have to read the information papers that we provide to you and the public.
Well, we do
And I'm-
now as it is.
Yes, sir. But I want to make sure that
Can I motion that we have a very thorough conversation about this at our next meeting rather than right now?
is there a palatable feeling of the board members to do it? Because I think it'd be a good idea.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah, me too.
I don't want to do it. I think 2 meetings a month is needed.
Okay.
No offense, Dr. Hunter. Keep an eye on you.
Well, only one of the meetings is actually where you vote. The rest is, I don't want to say fluff, but.
They're all important.
Yeah.
It seems like you've got
We'll make
some
them more
consensus there, sir.
dense packed.
Okay?
I had 2 comments I wanted to make. It'll be short. One is, as part of our discussion, are we able to get like a budget versus actual of what's spend per month, like in a visual graphical representation, and say we're on budget this month, or we're over budget or under budget, like just something that's digestible?
I think per month would be difficult. The plan to meet the board goal was going to be to do quarterly.
Quarterly.
Yeah, because per month, we could do a per month, like salary and benefits, because that's easy to do. Everything else, a lot happens month to month, so we were thinking quarterly.
Okay.
That's something we could kick around in the.
Yeah, I wasn't sure when you closed out the month, and it wouldn't have to be in month, obviously, but.
I think we can talk about that at finance. I think, are you on the finance committee?
I'd like to be, yeah.
Blessed.
Thanks.
The policy does state that we have to meet, we're supposed to meet on the fourth Thursday of every month. It does not say twice a month. So that's what the policy reads. So it's already policy to do it once a month, on the fourth Thursday.
All right, thanks. And then the other point was just from having a student in the district, I know there's a lot of pressure with testing and just seeing what my seventh grader had gone through last year, and we're talking a lot about safety and security and an SRO officer. Is there anything we can do to help with that on a daily basis, like a public morning announcement from the principal saying, hey, listen, we've been where you're going. If you're not feeling well today or you don't feel how things are working out for you in school, know that you're surrounded by teachers and administration and faculty that can help you. Don't internalize it. Come to us and let's talk it through. I ran into that situation. I reached out to a couple teachers last year. They did talk to my son, and it made a big difference. But they said they did notice a change, but just thought they were having the blues. I think it's kind of like a billboard on the road. Like if you aren't looking for a car, you can pass car billboards all day long but not see them. And by saying that every day during the morning announcements, maybe you'll catch somebody on an off day before it gets to a point where they're not feeling good about themselves and maybe they take some kind of action, whether it be a fight or whatever. Is that something we can consider? Yes. Okay, thanks.
Okay. Moving on, the last public comment of the evening. This is a general public comment. Mr. Bartholomew?
My name is Vic Bartholomew. I live in Milford Township. That vote you had about rounding up the metrics, I can tell you never worked in a machine shop. Now, I worked in a machine shop, and I made parts for aircraft gauges and medical gauges, and we couldn't round up anything. We use pressure mics. It is either right or it is wrong. If it's wrong, and you put it in that gauge, someone may die. So it may not seem like a big deal, but the sooner, and I went to school here, the sooner you engrave that just because you got 85.5 or 84.5, you don't round it up. You need the 85. Because out in the real world, anybody that worked in a machine shop knows that. It has to be right. It can't be halfway. You can't round it up. Or if you, like you said about target shooting, it's either a bullseye or it's not a bullseye. If you're a sniper, you got to hit that shot. That's all I have to say.
You're not a sniper, are you, Vic?
No.
Thank you.
Only public sniper.
And I agree. There are certain professions that precision is absolutely 100% necessary. I work in medicine, and there is oftentimes where we have to make a judgment call to round up or round down, and it's a life or death decision.
Right.
Based on patient's weight, the medication we have, the dosing we want to give. And so there are times when you're dealing with humans that we do things that aren't like machine shops. And I think that's where I came from in my consideration of.
I only said that because.
And I agree with you. I want the engine running right in the helicopters.
Right.
But,
It has to be right.
I can tell you that in medicine, though, when I'm dealing with patients, sometimes I have to figure out a dose. It may not be identical to what's recommended all the time. So
I just thought I'd make that comment because the sooner you
that's
ingrain
fine.
it, the better it is. That's all.
My personal
Thank you,
opinion,
Mr.
Vic, if
Bartholomew.
I may, is that, we now can have our resources concentrated in other areas on the ones that are not quite there. And that was my logic, maybe other people's,
No, that's fine.
appreciate it.
Okay, we'll skip over the calendar items because they're posted on the website. So do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? So moved. Mr. Jackson, second. Mr. Akmanowitz, discussion? None. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.